What's up, everybody? It's Jeremy Minnick with the Game Changing Roofer Podcast, a show created to share the stories of roofers who are changing the game in the roofing industry. This show is meant to help roofers build better businesses and better lives. On the show today is someone who has been around the roofing space a long time and worn a number of different hats. In high school, he worked with his father helping to install roofs. After college, he joined the Equipter team as a sales and marketing specialist, where he helped take them from a local and regional brand into a nationally recognized brand. More recently, he's developed a Facebook advertising solution that gives roofing companies a cost-effective, hassle-free way to grow their brand and generate leads. This is Sam Beiler, co-founder and CEO of Boostpoint. Sam, my man, how are you?
Jeremy, hey, doing great. Thanks for the invite here to the podcast. Looking forward to this.
Awesome. Yeah, great to have you on the show. Really excited about some of the topics that we're going to cover today. And ultimately, we're going to dive into a lot of some of the conceptual, high-level strategies and kind of ways to think about Facebook and Facebook advertising. But something you and I talked about before the show today as well is that this podcast is also going to be really focused on some really practical tips and, kind of practical implementation strategies for how to set up your roofing ads on Facebook, what images, what text, what campaign styles, different things like that. Basically, what literally practically works best on Facebook ads. But before we kind of dive into those points, we'd love to hear just a little bit more. Obviously, I kind of shared a little bit of an intro about your background, your story, your kind of exposure basically in the roofing industry for a large portion of your life. But would love to hear that from basically your perspective, your angle. How did you kind of get started in roofing and what has led up to starting Boostpoint?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I got introed into the roofing industry like a lot of people through a family business. My dad started a roofing company back in the 80s. And then I was just kind of going through high school and summers. I was like just looking for a way to make an extra buck. And I was like, hey, sure, I'll help on the roofing crew. So just as a roofing technician for a couple of years, was actually installing roofs and got to just kind of experience that firsthand. And that was a long time ago. And I can definitely attest to roofing is really hard work. I definitely have a lot of respect for the roofing community, and especially like the laborers out there doing the work, because it's tough work all around. But so spent a couple of years there in my dad's roofing business till I was like 17, 18 years old. And then coming out of high school, it was kind of around the same period where the Equipter company was born. So short story there, my dad's, again, started his roofing company in the 80s after about 15 years of doing roofing the hard way. He was like, man, there's got to be an easier way to tear off these roofs, and just debris management as a whole. There just was not a good solution for that. So created a prototype of what is now the Equipter RB4000, and was just looking for a tool for his roofing company. I was like, man, this works really, really well. Maybe we should look at building a couple more of these things and seeing if other roofing companies want to use them. So like most American innovations, the Equipter was born, and was a fantastic idea that eventually turned into its own company. So once Equipter was off the ground, back then it wasn't even Equipter, New Heights, the Roofer's Buggy was what it was called. Eventually that brand evolved into what is now Equipter. But after that company got on its feet, I decided to transition over to manufacturing. They're helping build the Equipters. And with that, that's where I really got saturated into the roofing community, I'd say. The first couple of years was just tactically, locally, just, putting on roofs and experiencing what it's like actually in a roofing company. But then at Equipter, just, went to every trade show, a lot of these regional events, the International Roofing Expo, and just started meeting a lot of other people in the roofing community as I got more and more involved in the Equipter company. And it was about when I was 18 years old, I think it was, I started in a sales position there at Equipter. which was harder than I thought it was going to be. Sales, if I'm completely honest, sales, like it, at least back then, really didn't match with my personality. Pretty extreme introvert, no previous sales experience. And, I was just tasked to, hey, like randomly call roofers up and tell them about this cool piece of equipment, that we came up with, and try to schedule a demo and travel 5-6 hours to spend an hour with a roofing company and show them how our product works. And it worked for me because I knew the industry and I knew our product, and I believed in it. The reality is, like, man, I experienced this myself. Like, I did roofing without an Equipter, I did roofing with an Equipter, and I found like, we could do the same amount of work with 2 less laborers, or we could have the same crew and be able to get an extra job done a week. So I was like, hey, I believe it. And I know every other roofing company can experience that as well. So that's how I took that. That was my sales approach. And it worked because I believed in the product. So spent about 3 years in sales there at Equipter. And I started generating just an interest in marketing and advertising. At that point, Equipter was a basic brand. We didn't really understand branding as a whole either. We did most of our marketing was outsourced, and we have a direct sales approach. So it's a little unique. We don't have a network of dealerships. So it was, getting to the end user through either sales or our own marketing messaging. So I kind of looked at it as an extension just to my sales. It's like, hey, instead of calling on 30, 40 roofers a day randomly, I could create a social media post and write some blogs and get in front of hundreds, if not thousands of people, through a couple clicks and on a computer. And so that was kind of my approach into it. And I started just educating myself on marketing, advertising, strategy, and also tactics, and eventually built a marketing team there at Equipter, became the marketing director, and spent about 5 years at a marketing position there, building the marketing team. And it really worked. Just what we were doing, it ticked. I mean, it was kind of just a lot of timing went right on a lot of different things. As a company in manufacturing, we had the capacity to build more equipment. We just needed more sales for it. So start doubling down on marketing and advertising. And in the span of 3 years, we went from about 12, 15 employees to 50 employees. So things, really blew up. Things were ticking. And when I went back I started analyzing, hey, what were the things that helped us grow? What were the key practical and tactical things that we were doing that triggered and that fueled that type of growth for our company? And a lot of it came down to what we were doing digitally through advertising. When I started getting into the marketing role there at Equipter, was just when like Facebook and Instagram, Google were really new. You could build a business page on Facebook. You could put some advertising dollars towards posts and put a cool video together and put it in front of an audience and get traffic to your website and generate conversations, start conversations. And we really started doubling down on that. And it really worked. I mean, when I go back to, like, if you'd ask me, I kind of laugh at it now, because if I'd rewind 8 years ago and you tell me, hey, you're going to sell a over $30,000 piece of equipment on Facebook, I would have kind of laughed. It was like, oh yeah, that's funny. Yeah. But that's really what happened. Right. It was simple. That's where our audience, was. We figured out, hey, we could get in front of roofers on Facebook. It was just a matter of telling a good story and getting that story, communicating it in front of the right audience, which in our situation was the roofing community. And a few of the big moments for me when I was like, oh, I know this is working, is when, from the beginning, we went to a lot of the industry trade shows. So the International Roofing Expo and, the FRSA, which is the Florida Roofing Show. There's just different regional expos across the US. And, you know, eight-ish years ago, we go to these events and it was like, the reaction was like, wow, this is such an awesome piece of equipment. This is the first time I've ever seen it. I didn't even know something like this was available. So it was just general product awareness was not there. People didn't know about us. So it was like, how do we get people to know about us? So after we started really doubling down, investing into mainly Facebook ads, after 12, 24 months, the reaction that we get at these trade shows was more and more, oh, this piece of equipment, I think I've seen this before. You know, I saw a video of it on Facebook or YouTube or something like that. And so we started getting that reaction instead of, you know, oh, we've never seen this before. So those were some of the early indicators that I knew that, hey, this is working. It was even before we could prove the ROI of it, of like, oh, we know that financially we're getting a positive ROI on this advertising spend. It just advertising spend. We just saw that, you know, this makes sense and we know this is going to work. So we started doubling down on it early. And that's really the one thing that I attribute a lot of our success to. Again, it was a lot of things that were working together, an amazing team there at Equipter, with manufacturing, sales, and marketing. And all three of those things combined really helped us grow that company very healthily. But a lot of it was fueled by the interest and the sales we were able to generate, the revenue we were able to generate through the marketing and advertising that we were doing.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. I mean, first of all, that's I love that story. It's just so cool to hear the progression of how you went from hands-on, obviously helping to install roofs, really gaining that firsthand experience in that capacity, then joining on, obviously with Equipter, which again, it's cool. I mean, I think you had mentioned this, but you know, this is a company that your father started. So truly this, you know, family business in Lancaster, PA that you guys kind of grew from the ground up. And so that's just an incredible startup and success story. But then as you obviously transition your role from kind of working in production and manufacturing into marketing, I mean, obviously you're gaining super valuable insights into Facebook marketing from, again, a high level conceptual strategic standpoint, and also in the tactics. And I think one of the biggest things that stood out to me about what you said is the kind of the power, and maybe this is a good place to kind of start, is how Facebook can be used to sort of build your brand. And we'll get into talking more and more about lead generation and running those types of campaign. But I think it's helpful to start from a place of how can Facebook be a platform to really build your brand? Ultimately, what does that mean? It means grow awareness and trust and relevancy around you and your company name and your, you know, the content that you're putting out. And I think that was manifested as a great example. You mentioned you were going to conferences and these trade shows, and conversations changed from, hey, this is a pretty cool product. Wow, we've never seen anything like this before. Hey, this is pretty new and innovative, to, man, I think I saw you guys. Hey, aren't you the company that was on Facebook and YouTube? And obviously that, I'm sure, was a testament, of course, first of all, to the fact that you grew your brand and grew your awareness through Facebook. But it also, of course, you know, what's the quote unquote ROI of that? In the sense, it makes selling easier, right? When somebody knows you, when somebody already trusts you, they feel like you're already a celebrity in their mind, or somebody that they know well. Like they know you better than obviously you know them, because you've been in their inbox and in their news feed all the time. It makes selling easier. So we'd love to just hear, you know, what are some of the points that you might share with roofers in particular about the importance of building a brand on Facebook, and especially kind of how can roofers do that, especially on a local geographic level? How do you build awareness around your company using Facebook?
Yeah, this is a great question, because I originally asked it to myself about 2.5 years ago. So it was after we had a lot of this success with Equipter, and I was like, I know it's got to work for the roofing community, for roofing contractors specifically, because I knew this wasn't just like a one-off. Oh, it works for Equipter, but it doesn't work for any other company. And so I just kind of started exploring just ways that this might apply to roofing contractors. And I just started having more and more conversations at these trade shows of like, hey, are you guys doing Facebook ads at all? Like, are you finding any success? And I was really shocked that, again, 3 years ago, 90% of the time, like the answer was simply no from roofing contractors. Like, hey, like, have you even experimented with it? And it was just like a solid no. And I don't know, that just intrigued me. And it's just that like some of those things that trigger, and it's like, I've got to figure this out. I've got to figure this out. So that's put me on just this personal mission to figure this out specifically for the roofing community. And so it was a lot of experimentation at first. We work with just a handful of companies, just experimenting some things. And we may tell a little more of the story of how this eventually evolved into Boostpoint, because it eventually turned into a software where companies can easily do this themselves. But a couple of the things that we saw really worked for the branding element, and answer your question kind of on the branding, how can companies brand well on Facebook, is how specific you can get with running campaigns. So I know a lot of people think, most roofers have, run direct mail campaigns in neighborhoods. Hey, I'm doing a job in XYZ neighborhood, so I'm going to send out 200 postcards to the homes surrounding in that area. And the reality is you can do that exact same thing through Facebook. And you can get in front of them actually multiple times, and you can actually get your brand in front of how I look at it as more valuable screen time, or because they can actually consume a video, not just like a photo or a postcard or a magazine ad,
right?
For less money. So when I think of branding, it's basically, hey, you need to build trust with the consumer. So to build trust, people need to see you multiple times. I'm not really going to truly trust somebody until I have multiple conversations with them. And so that's the challenge for a roofing company, is like, hey, how can I get in front of homeowners multiple times so that I can start building trust, so that they actually trust me with solving their problem. When they actually have a roofing problem, that I'm the company that they think about when they're looking to solve that problem. And the reality is you just need to be in front of those people and generate that awareness. So again, the practical way that you can do that on Facebook that we really started getting a lot of success with is like, hey, roofing companies are already working in neighborhoods. Like that's kind of the core element of your brand is, your company's moving around day by day, and you're leaving these footprints of your brand in these different neighborhoods. They're seeing your trucks, they're seeing your yard signs, they're seeing you actually, do the work in these neighborhoods. The neighbors start talking about, your roofing company, and that's where you generate, referrals and that type of thing. Well, then what are some other things that you can implement to increase that, to take that a little bit further? And we've seen, hey, dumping $100, $150 in a Facebook campaign, just in a 1 mile radius around each one of your roofing builds, is a great way to establish more of a brand inside of those key neighborhoods where you're looking to produce more work.
That's awesome strategy. And just to sort of almost slow that down for a minute and kind of break it down, just to be really clear almost in terms of terms, and kind of help make sure all of our minds are wrapped around what you just outlined. So basically the first thing I think, and kind of guide me as I go through this. So basically when you're setting up a campaign on Facebook, you're basically often met with two options. The first one is to run a campaign called a lead generation or a lead campaign. But the second, and the one that we're talking about, is called an awareness, or i.e. a brand awareness campaign. The differences between these campaigns, Sam can kind of speak, maybe you can speak about that in just a minute as we transition over into leads. But essentially what you're saying is you set up a brand awareness campaign, and as you're setting it up and going down and choosing those options, you'll be met with the ability to select a specific geographic pin. In the case of Boostpoint and sort of Facebook, the ad platform itself, this could be as specific as the actual home that you're working at. Like you have an actual project that's about to happen or is actually taking place that day, etc. And so then you target that home, that address, and all the way down to as small as a 1 mile radius around, or potentially even a couple of mile radius around that specific address in Facebook. Just to make sure, do I have that correct?
Yeah, you're spot on there. So again, it's really going into when you're building out a campaign, you need to think about what's my objective here? Am I looking to generate as many leads as possible? Or am I more looking to get in front of as many people as possible? So when you're setting up campaigns, again, you have those two objectives. So with a lead generation campaign, some people are like, well, obviously I want to get as many leads as possible. Like that's
Right.
the simple answer. Well, it's like sometimes, but not all the time, because
Right.
if you're running that type of campaign, basically it's optimized a little bit differently. So you won't get in front of as many people. You might get more leads, but you won't get as many impressions. So your CPMs, cost per 1,000 impressions, will be higher on a lead generation type of ad in comparison to if you're running a brand awareness, a reach, a link click ad. It's more optimized for reach, so your CPMs will be lower. Therefore, you'll get in front of more people, get more impressions for the same amount of ad spend that you do compared to a lead generation campaign. And yeah, again, thinking about that, because you really need to think about marketing and branding as a whole. The concept in building a brand is think about how can you get your brand in front of a group of people, your prime audience, multiple times. Because again, that's some people like the lead ATM mentality is like, hey, just the cheapest leads, but it's not sustainable. And that's where a
Right.
lot of people fall prey to just Home Advisor and Thumbtack, and they try to build their business just off of lead gen. But it's not sustainable. Really, if you want to build a long-lasting, healthy company, you really need to think more long-term in how can I build a brand in front of my prime audience.
Right.
And again, how can you need to get in front of these people multiple times? So how can you really establish, I am the roofer, like I'm known as the authority in roofing with this certain group. And so it's really hard to do that in like your whole service area. And that's what I saw when I started looking over the shoulders of roofing companies when they did try running their own Facebook ads. It was like, hey, I'm just going to do 50-mile radius around my office. I'm just going to blast that whole area, put, $10 a day. And really, they were just kind of throwing a lot of money into the win because it was so broad. So I started really realizing, hey, you can go as small as a 1 mile radius and make your advertising dollar more efficient, because now you're focusing on the group of people that are already seeing your trucks, they're already seeing your yard signs. Maybe you sent a postcard out already, your sales reps are canvassing in that area. It just makes everything you do more effective because people are seeing you on these multiple channels.
Right. Those are great points. And two more that I wanted to just highlight real quick before we transition into time about, okay, like lead gen campaigns and how those exactly work. The first one is question is just a clarification about, so you mentioned the kind of cost per impressions versus other types of payment models within Facebook. In other words, what are you paying for with a brand awareness campaign? And my question is, can you just give a quick example? Let's say you had $100 and you could put it towards a brand awareness campaign, or you could put it towards a lead ad campaign. What would be the differences in sort of numbers that you would see? In other words, how many people might see your ad on a lead generation focused campaign for $100 versus how many people would see your ad in a brand awareness campaign for $100?
Yeah, and there's a lot of variables to Facebook ads, so I'm gonna give some averages here, but they can vary a lot depending. One of the biggest variables is your creative, so the ad creative. Um, you know, it's it's not as simple as like, hey, sending a postcard out that looks okay and you feel good about it, and your costs for that postcard are going to be the same, just based on how much does that stamp cost.
Right.
Where impressions on Facebook, a lot of it's determined on the quality of your ad. So if people are engaging with it and Facebook sees that, they're going to show it to more people. Versus if you have a bad ad, the image just isn't engaging, the ad text, people aren't, it's not scroll stopping. Your CPMs are going to be a little bit higher.
Got it.
But at like a comparison, like if you're really tracking your impression costs, say $100. Well, what does $100 get me? On average, like if you're doing a lead gen campaign, I've seen that a couple thousand impressions. So like 3 to 5 is that average ish. And then, if you're doing a reach campaign, you're going to be looking at it. It's not always double, but sometimes it's actually close to like double the amount of impressions. So people are just seeing your ad more often. And that's, again, you really need to go into, well, what's my objective here? I mean, the reality is like, okay, if you're saying, hey, I can budget $100, I wouldn't really recommend putting that into a lead gen campaign, because you'll get a handful of leads, but it really takes 10, 15 leads to, dwindle that down into a handful of appointments. Then from those appointments, you need to, you can close, whatever your close ratio is, 20, 30%. Whatever that might be. So it's like, the expectation, oh, I'll spend $100 in a Facebook campaign, maybe get 2 or 3 leads. And the expectation of, oh, I'll definitely sell a job from that isn't a very real expectation. So it might be better to invest that $100 into, hey, let me really look at getting in front of, the whole neighborhood, a couple times with that $100, so that when I'm in the neighborhood, maybe they'll call me because they also saw my postcard, or a neighbor talked to them, and more building that brand awareness.
Right. So that's a really helpful distinction. And basically, the ability with the lead ad to maybe get in front of, with $100, get in front of about 3,000 to 5,000 people. Although a distinction there would also be that you might actually get in front of, quite realistically, about 1,000 people, or maybe even 500 to 800 people, but you're showing them the ad multiple times. And so therefore you're creating, 2 to 3 impressions per person, per user. Now that's not always
Correct.
the case, but that could be the reality. But on a brand awareness campaign, same concept. You're showing it to a certain number of people, and those people could be showing the ad multiple times, leading to a greater number of impressions. But your dollar, in other words, is going to stretch at least probably about twice as far in terms of the number of eyeballs that it's going to receive. So I think that's a great distinction to draw between lead ads and brand awareness. Now, really quickly, I just want to pivot to ask you if you could highlight maybe 3 types of content, and just kind of be as specific as you can be. What are 3 types of content that, and creative as you called it, that you've found to be really work when it comes to brand awareness Facebook ads? What are 3 kinds of content, or the messages? What are 3 that you could highlight?
Yeah. So the one I like the most is where you can highlight a personality in your company. So we really have to realize the context of the environment that we're getting into with running social media ads. So why are people on the Facebook platform? They're really there to engage with other human beings. That's the premise of why Facebook was created, to create stronger relationships between, family members and friends. So again, human interaction is what people are there to consume. So as a brand, we really need to consider that as we're creating content on these platforms. So the photos, the videos that you're actually using, it's really important to think through that lens. So the type of ads that I've seen really work best is and get the best rating. So Facebook kind of has this rating of like engagement, and how like people engage and how much they watch through your videos, and it all goes into like how much further your advertising will go to. And what we've seen work best, like for a roofing company, you need to kind of get creative as a roofing company. It's like, okay, the reality is people are not thinking about their roof that often. You know,
Right.
you live inside of your company, you're thinking about roofs every minute, you know. You're a very, very small percentage of humans that think about roofs every day.
Right.
So again, we have to realize that like content just about a roof probably it doesn't engage that great on Facebook. So
Right.
what you really need to do is how can I highlight, you know, something that fits the platform that also does you know, cross paths with the product that I'm selling. But so getting down to practically like what have we seen work is like even just selfie style videos like through an iPhone, or you know, talking in a neighborhood, maybe in front of one of your roofing builds, saying, you know, hey Lancaster, we're in your neighborhood this week doing roofs. While we're here, we just wanted to give the neighborhood a heads up, and you know, if you have any roofing needs, feel free to, you know, look us up, and we'd be happy to schedule a free roof inspection or something like that. But again, something like that, there's human interaction there. So that's kind of what people are expecting, you know, on this platform. But then it also crosses with the product that you're selling. So you can still talk about your roof. You know, I want to be careful not to, what I don't want is people listen to this and is like, oh, they try to, you know, start a comedy brand that's just entertainment, you know, that doesn't actually sell the product. You do need to look at how do we sell through these ads, but you have to think about it differently than a billboard. You have to think about it differently than a TV ad, because it's a different environment.
Right.
Another thing like practical, like, so, okay, well, maybe I don't have the bandwidth to do a ton of video ads. Well, what type of photos could I use? Type of photos that tend to do well are just more action type of photos. So instead of just maybe a drone shot of a new roof, or the one I see roofers do a lot that never works is a, you know, photo of their truck. Like no one's really interested in your truck.
Right.
But like, hey, maybe some action photos of the roof actually being replaced, and with some ad text that's like, hey, we're doing this roof in your neighborhood. You know, if you have any roofing needs, check us out. But again, it's making that connection there with something that might be happening in their area, what you're doing, instead of, you know, just this more generic billboard type of imagery and TV ad type of. We actually did a test. It was interesting. Like we've tested a lot of different types of content. One of the tests we did was a roofing promo video. So think about, it was pretty much a TV style ad, like a 60-second promo video for this roofing company. It looked phenomenal. Like the cinematography was done so well. And it was a great video, like for their website and potentially even for a TV ad. But we tried running that video on a Facebook ad in comparison to a video one of the sales reps shot on their iPhone of a customer testimonial. So of a roof they did, and just getting a 30-second testimonial of one of their customers. And we ran those side by side. And the video that, you know, cost nothing to create, just a sales rep, you know, 5 minutes, outperformed the promo video that took about $10,000 to create. It got about twice as good of the results. And when I'm talking about results, it was like traffic and the lead gen that came from that particular ad.
Right. Right. That's fascinating. Just to clarify, because we may talk about this a little bit more, the side-by-side comparison there, was that in a lead gen campaign or was that a brand awareness campaign?
That was a brand awareness campaign, sending people to their website.
Interesting. Yeah, that's kind of a fascinating point. But in any case, just to recap and sort of reemphasize, basically, it sounded like the 3 points that you just mentioned, that 3 types of content, 3 types of creative, 3 types of ads that you should run for a brand awareness campaign would be, number one, kind of a sales rep or some team member, maybe the owner of the company, just using their iPhone, taking a selfie video, maybe about 40 to 60 seconds kind of in length, somewhere in that range.
Yep.
And then number 2, maybe a photo, not one that's kind of stale and stock image-ish, but rather, you know, very relevant, very kind of fun, very action oriented. And then the third kind of campaign that you just mentioned is potentially running something that is a little bit more of your sort of brand video, maybe something you've invested a lot of money into creating, it's not to say it doesn't work, but maybe it doesn't work as well as some of the other types of ads that you've done. But one thing I just want to highlight as well is I think there's two key messages behind any kind of creative that you just mentioned that are really important to consider. And the first one is specificity. There's this phrase. I was in a BNI, Business Networking International networking group not too long ago, and one of the guys in the group always had this phrase, hilarious phrase. He would always say, "You got to be specific to be terrific." And he was a real like jokester, had a real fun personality, and it was just one of those phrases that he just reiterated over and over and over again until it just stuck into your memory. But it was so true. Like when you ask for referrals from clients, or in the case of a Facebook ad, what is going to catch your attention more as a guy on Facebook and you're scrolling through your feed? What's going to catch your attention more? Somebody going, "Hey, looking for a new roof?" Or somebody coming out with the opening line of, "Hey, Lancaster, PA," or "Hey, Foxborough neighborhood." The more specific that you can get, the more attention grabbing it's going to be. And the second thing, as relates to kind of, again, not only specificity, but like relevance. And so and this, they almost pair hand in hand. So for the photo, for example, you said, photos of roofers' trucks typically don't perform well, even though that's cool, obviously, to the sales rep or the roofer themselves. Customers aren't, their attention is not grabbed by that. On the other hand, what might grab their attention is, what if you posted up your truck and your personal self next to the Foxborough neighborhood sign entering into that community? Or what if you posted yourself up on top of the roof, circling with chalk, maybe some of the indents from hail, or posted yourself up in front of the town sign? So if you're going after Lancaster, PA, maybe the main street has a Lancaster, PA, welcome to sign. I mean, that's the kind of a creative I would imagine, right, that would really catch the attention of somebody scrolling through Facebook. Is that right?
Yeah, you're right on there. And one other that I really want to plug to is take advantage of customer testimonials, customer stories. And I mean, a quick 30-second, again, because this fits so well into the Facebook ecosystem. Like, people want to hear from people inside of this. So, hearing a quick 30-second video from your customers and using that, because there you have social proof as well. I mean, you can, Nancy down on 31st Avenue, you did her roof. Well, you could take a video of her and use that same video to target, that 2 to 3 mile radius around there. And you could mention in the ad, "Hey, here's a roof we did in your area, hear from, Nancy," type thing. You have super specific, super relevant. And again, a quick tip on like customer testimonial videos. I've done a ton of these. There's usually like 3 quick questions. You usually don't want to just hand that over to, "Hey, tell us about your experience." You'll usually get a ton of different answers. They can usually trail off. It's more like, "Hey, what was your problem? What did we do to solve that problem for you? And what was your experience, with our company?" And you'll usually get some really punchy like answers to those questions that are like gold for ads.
I think that's great advice. And specifically, for those who are listening, if you've never read a book called Building a Story Brand by a guy named Donald Miller, that's a book that, especially if you're in marketing or you're a owner of a roofing company or a sales rep who's just interested more in using stories to sell, then that's a book, again, Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller, that really unpacks everything that Sam just talked about in terms of, at the end of the day, one of the things Donald Miller says, he kind of says 2 things all the time in different ways. The first one is, your customers are not listening until you start talking about their problems and how you solve them. As soon as you start talking about their problems and how you solve them, now you have their attention. And the second thing that he says all the time is basically, it's not the best companies that win. It's the ones that are understood the fastest and the clearest by the consumer. And so again, just kind of taking those 2 ideas and reflecting back on what you've shared over the last 10 to 15 minutes is, number one, your ad creative, your video, your photo, the text that leads into the video or the ad should, number one, very clearly state who you are, what you do, and how you can help. And the creative, again, the photos or especially the videos should also, again, what is the problem that your customer has and how are you going to solve it? And I don't know if you have anything to add onto there, but please go ahead. And then also maybe you can transition a bit into, kind of with lead generation campaigns on Facebook. Talk to us a little bit about that as well. And what are some of the most important things that somebody setting up those kinds of campaigns should consider on Facebook?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, as far as like, content and that type of thing, clarity is huge. And, building a story, just being straight to the point and simplifying and just being clear. So it's often harder than it seems, because we sometimes say, oh, well, just simple, clear, like we can, but sometimes it takes a little bit more effort to take, oh, well, this is what we offer, and boil it down into a couple sentences where someone can read that and clearly understand, oh yeah, the problem that I have, this is exactly how that company can solve it, and I trust them because of what they're messaging. And so speed to clarity is huge, and it's doubly important with social media ads is because of the attention span.
Right.
The reality is people on Facebook, I mean, you're a blip on their screen as they're scrolling through their feed. So being very straight to the point, clarity is huge when you're building out ad content.
Right. And if I can just quickly on that one, I just want to chime in and sort of add, again, kind of piggybacking off the idea of StoryBrand and Donald Miller. You might be thinking as you listen to this, how do I create simple written copy? Or even just what do I say in a video that is simple, direct to the point? What's a formula? What's a system for how to create those kinds of messages? I think one of the simplest ones that we use all the time as we build websites or help to create creative and copy and things like that is basically this. It's, you think about, first of all, I'll super simplify it into basically 3 steps. You have to create a 1-sentence message that combines who's the character. In other words, who am I talking to very specifically? Who is my customer? We'll come back to that. Number 2, what is their problem? And 3, and what's the plan for them getting in touch with me, starting to, basically implement the solution. So for example, who's your character? Rather than just saying, we help anybody under the sun install roofs, which is basically talking to nobody, be very specific about the character. We help busy homeowners. So now you've segmented a very particular kind of working class who owns a home. Therefore, you're very much focusing on residential homeowners as you target these neighborhoods. We help busy homeowners. And then the problem, basically fix and repair their leaky roof, or see if they qualify for a full replacement from their insurance company. And there's all kinds of variations about what their problem might be, but the more specific that you can be, the better message will come out. Yep. So we help busy homeowners solve this particular problem as is relevant, and we give them a simple 3-step process for getting in touch. All you have to do is just give us a call or send us a message through the form below. We'll schedule a consult, and we'll come out to your house to do an at-home or in-home inspection and deliver a quote. Boom, a very clear plan for who you're talking to, their problem, and the plan to get in touch. But sorry, I've derailed a bit.
No, you're good.
Keep on with lead ads.
Yeah, and this is actually a good transition as we transition into talking about lead gen through Facebook, because I can't stress enough how important ad copy actually is. If anything, running hundreds, if not thousands of ads the past 12 months for roofing companies, it's made me a more firm believer in the importance of strong copy in marketing and advertising, because I can see, the same photo to the same audience, and the only variable is a different headline. And that one variable, just the change in the ad copy, can change your metrics so much as far as cost per lead and the value that you actually get out of your advertising dollar can change so much just on what you're communicating through the text of your ad. So yeah, transitioning over to the lead gen side of Facebook ads. Kind of when I put Facebook into, we were talking about this a little bit before we started the podcast here, Jeremy, as far as like where would we put Facebook as far as lead quality compared to other platforms. And to me, lead quality is one of the main variables when you're talking about the value of leads. So I mean, quantity is one, quality is another, and then another one I like to think about is the scalability as well. So as far as lead quality, you usually have referrals. I mean, everybody knows that a referral lead is the easiest to close. After that, it's usually organic, which is like, people coming to your website organically, and then getting in contact with you. Thirdly, I'd put Google ads. People think with Google ads that you're targeting people that have that intent already. They're
Right.
searching Google. And so your lead quality is pretty high there. They're expensive because of that. And then I'd bring Facebook in right below Google ads as far as lead quality.
Mm-hmm.
And it depends. This is subjective as well. I have seen being able to even generate better quality leads than Google at times through Facebook ads, depending what the objective is. So there's different ways that you can qualify your leads, your Facebook leads. And we can maybe get into that in a minute. So I'd say Facebook comes in right there. And then below that, you have, telemarketing leads, lead gen services like Home Advisor, Angie's List, Thumbtack. And this can maybe be a way to maybe jumpstart some of your jobs into a season, but it's just not sustainable. I haven't seen like long-term sustainability through lead gen services like Home Advisor. It can maybe be a way to get a job or two that maybe you can get some more referrals and start to build your network. But it's not a sustainable business model for building out a healthy business.
Right. No, I think that's a great distinction between obviously the quality, the quantity of leads, and the scalability. So I think that was a great outline of kind of the quality of the leads. What is it about, in running lead ads within Facebook? What have you seen? I mean, maybe you could just share the stories or almost the case studies of 1 to 2 campaigns, 1 or 2 roofing companies you've done these Facebook ads for. What are some of the results that you've seen from lead ads in Facebook?
100%. So as much as we've talked about brand awareness and the value of that, in my opinion, Facebook is one of the best places to generate leads as well. And the ROI is there if you're willing to put the work in. So example campaigns that we've seen success in. So one of the things I really like about Facebook is the scalability of it. And it's just almost an unlimited capacity that you can tap into. With referrals, you're kind of limited to your network. SEO, great long-term value. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time to get there. With Facebook, if you do it right, and you have the right type of ads to the right type of audience, it's something that you can tap into right off the get-go. So a good example of how this can work. So if you're going into, okay, I want to get into Facebook ads, I want to make this work. I want to see the positive ROI where I can actually put the math into it. Some numbers that we've seen and that are, again, vary a little bit, depending where you're at in the country, but I'm going to give averages here that will stay true pretty much wherever you're at. So what we've seen is, hey, creating a good Facebook ad. So when I talk about good Facebook ad, it's targeting the right people. So a big enough audience, but again, in areas that you've recently completed work. So targeting the right people with a decent ad. So when I'm talking about a decent ad is ad text that's dialed in, very clear, very to the point, providing value. Examples of that, like for insurance, restoration companies out there doing storm restoration, could be like, hey, homeowners, most homeowners don't realize, that they could get their roof replaced at, the cost of for their insurance company, covering the cost of their roof replacement, something like that. And you're like,
Right.
oh, most homeowners may not realize that. So,
Right.
content around that, solid headline with a clear call to action, with a really great video that's straight to the point, or an engaging photo. So that's what, in my mind, like that is a quality ad. So you have that. Another element of this where I see 80-90% of roofers that are doing their own Facebook ads, I see them do this one thing wrong, and that's just send people to their homepage. So you can have the perfect ad with the perfect ad copy, but if you're sending them to a page that's not optimized for conversion, your ROI is going to fall apart.
Right.
You're not actually going to get leads generated. So it's really important to, what we use mostly at Boostpoint is actually using the Facebook forms. The embedded Facebook forms is by far converts the best, because another page doesn't have to load. You're not taking them outside of the Facebook app, and the Facebook forms are optimized, but it's a little tricky to set up. And that's why a lot of roofing companies, don't utilize that feature, is because some of the complexities of setting it up. But again, it'll be hard to really prove the ROI without having some of those things intact. So again, to me, that's the anatomy of a good Facebook ad. So if those things are done right, dialed in, we're normally seeing average roof costs, like in the roofing industry, around $30 to $50 is what we're seeing, a decent quality lead. So again, you can get leads for cheaper than that. We've generated a ton of leads for lower costs than that, but you usually suffer the quality. So again, there's kind of like, well, what's your objective? Are you looking for as many leads as possible, and you have a great follow-up system, and you'll weed through them in your office, or it's like, we don't have the biggest bandwidth, for qualifying leads, so we want to pre-qualify them. One of the ways you can do that is maybe adding a custom field in the form. Say, hey, tell us about your roof, so that you're not just getting contact info, but there's a little bit more of a qualification that someone has to type something out to actually submit the form. So again, a few of those things that'll usually determine your lead cost as well. Again, sure, you can get leads for $15 a lead, but they're just not going to be super quality. But usually success at the end of the day, if I'm looking at a lead gen campaign, financial success for that campaign is a 5x ROI or greater on profit. So doing that math, so say you spend $1,000 on a campaign, you should be able to generate, I'm just doing the quick math in my head, you should be able to generate 20-ish leads from that $1,000. From there, like average appointment conversion from leads, what we're seeing on Facebook is around 40%. Again, a lot of this is dependent on your follow-up process. Your 21, your chances for actually getting a hold of a lead are 21 times greater if you reach out to them within 5 minutes of them filling out the form versus 30 minutes. So even something like that can really mess with your ROI if you're following up 12 hours later or the next day. But again, average, if you have a good follow-up process is, getting in touch with these leads within, 15, 20 minutes after they fill out this form. You should be able to convert 40% of your leads into actual appointments. So, okay, we go $1,000, 20 leads, 40% conversion, you're looking about 8 appointments. From those 8 appointments, depending what your close ratio is, you should be able to sell 2-ish jobs, and generate,
Right.
depending, if your average roof sale is $15,000, that's $30,000 in revenue. You should be able to generate $6,000 of profit, if you're running a healthy business, from that total revenue. So again, doing that math, if you take the time to do that math, you can start to track your ROI. It's like, oh, I spent $1,000 this month on Facebook ads, and I was able to generate $6,000 in company profit from that.
Right. No, I mean, man, that's fire, dude.
That's getting in the weeds a little bit. I hope I didn't lose everybody there.
Fire. I mean, if you were able to follow along through all that, which I hope every single person was, I mean, that is absolute. That is the kind of, for some, mind-numbing amount of detail that is critical, to actually running a successful Facebook ad campaign. I mean, that is what it's all about. So that's awesome and great job. I mean, and very clear, just kind of going through all of that. And I think just a couple of things to highlight, just about, okay, what are these metrics to consider? I mean, basically at the end of the day, when you run a Facebook lead gen campaign, let's say you start with $1,000. If the average cost per lead, as Sam outlined, which is the averages that they see in most cases, is around $30 to $50 per lead. Let's take the higher end of that average at $50, and therefore we put in $1,000 into the campaign, we divide it by $50, and that produces for us mathematically 20 leads. Okay, great. So I have 20 leads that have come through this month after I spent $1,000. From those 20 leads that came through, I'm able to book 40% into appointments. So 40% of the 20 is 8 leads. 8 leads I've turned into actual, I'm going to go and meet with this person appointments and inspections. And from there, let's assume an average sales close rate of booked appointments at 25%. That means that 8 of my appointments turned into, at a close rate of 25%, 2 jobs. From those 2 jobs, I yield, at an average of $15,000 a roof, I yield $30,000 in gross revenue. And at a net profit of 20%, I yield you $6,000, right? So I yield $6,000, which means that if I have a 20% net profit on $30,000 gross, I've yielded $6,000 in cash from $1,000 in ad spend, which is a 600% return on investment in terms of profit, obviously not just revenue. Yep. And let's say I don't have anywhere near those kinds of profit margins. I'm tight, I'm razor sharp, maybe I'm struggling, I'm in scale mode, I can't seem to keep my profits right, but I'm around 10%. Well, 10% of $30,000 in gross revenue is still $3,000 net profit, which basically means at the end of the day, and this is what I always say to clients and things like that, you put $1 into the ATM lead machine and it kicked back $3, right? If I invest $1,000 in Facebook ads and it gives me $3,000 in net profit, I invested $1 into the ATM lead and I got $3 back. Or if my profit margins are great, or if my sales close rate is better than 25%, or if my team is better at booking appointments at a greater rate than 40%, any increase in those numbers is going to dramatically and significantly impact the ROI that you get from the campaign. And reversely, it's so important to know these numbers because, you may be running a Facebook lead campaign and go, man, we got 100 leads over the last 3 months. This is awesome. But you took 2 hours on average to follow up with each lead, and you only book like 5 to 10%, 5 to 10 out of all 100 leads. And you're going, man, we just wasted a ton of money. And you only yield 1 job at a 25% close rate from lots and lots of money invested. And you're going, what happened? Well, the answer is your appointment booking process is broken. You need to be faster and like a speedboat in your follow-up, like immediately responding to that lead. Or on the other hand, maybe you have a 60% appointment booking rate. You pay a person on your team to actually, for every booked appointment they get, you pay them commission to incentivize them. This is actually a strategy and tactic that we have with one of the roofing companies that we work with. They book at about 60% in terms of their appointment, 60 to 65% in terms of their appointment close rate, because that guy who answers the phone and follows up right away is incentivized with a little mini bonus every time he books an appointment. But in that case, let's just say, for example, you get 60% of your booked appointments, but you only convert, like one roof out of all of it. You would know that, well, something's broken in your sales process. And so these are all the different layers of a great Facebook ad campaign that have to be working together to make it all, produce the ROI that makes it worth it. And I don't know, do you have anything to add to that in terms of strategy or financial mathematical considerations?
Yeah, and there's a balance here. And I mean, personally, that's my jam. Like, I love that part of building a company. 4 years ago, I was like, I think I'm more of a creative and more of a marketer, but as I started just really digging into it, I learned that, creativity is more than just shooting a cool video or taking a cool photo. It's also how you build a business, thinking creatively of, just building a healthy business. And part of that is doing the due diligence to dig into, hey, what's actually working and how do I track that? So a buddy of mine, he's just actually jumping into roofing sales next week. And I'm just kind of working with him to, hey, like, what are some things that you could track and how would this work for you? He's looking, building a book of business, with his network, not just relying on the roofing company that he's working for. So he's almost looking at it, hey, I'm building my own mini business working for this roofing company, as a sales rep. And so, we're building out, okay, let's look at how many leads you need to generate to hit your sales goals. So it's just really going through those numbers we just talked about there. It's like, okay, personally and for him, it's even making sense to invest in advertising for his personal brand. Like, right. A lot of people kind of sales reps I look at my roofing company for my leads and then I door knock, and they don't really even consider investing in their own brand with digital ads. But, as you do the math as a sales rep, it's like, hey, if I can put $1,000 into this and I'm able to generate $3,000 worth of commission, which is kind of when you do the math, it was like, hey, if all these things are true and my follow-up process is there and I can generate these Facebook leads, at the end of the day, you should be able to at least 3x your investment as a sales rep in commission. It gets you moving in the right direction just a little bit faster. And the other thing we haven't even really talked about here is, the network that starts building then for your business. So it's number one, okay, sure. Can you at least get a positive ROI? For me, I'm like, hey, if you're looking to use Facebook ads for lead gen, at least get to a positive ROI. Try to get to that 6x, place as far as ROI from ad spend. But even if you just so break even, well, you've covered your marketing costs, but you've also done a roof in that neighborhood that can be the channel to get another referral or 2 or 3 referrals in that neighborhood. And that's where, again, it just starts building that network effect. And that's where it really starts making sense, to invest into these type of lead generation campaigns and methods. And again, it's just really looking at, hey, how can I stretch this advertising dollar the most? And we've definitely seen Facebook is one of the most scalable ways of doing that.
Right. And piggybacking off that for just a minute, I think it's also, there's going to be 2 types of people who are listening to this. One might be a roofing company owner or somebody at, kind of an executive position within the company, but the other might be actually just a roofer or a roof sales guy in general. And just to sort of almost provide a different angle on everything that Sam just shared is that I think a lot of roof sales reps feel like I can't be spending $100 to $150 per lead from a Google Ads campaign, plus maybe paying a marketing company or a Google Ads specialist to help me run those ads, et cetera, because the ROI, if it's costing me $200 a lead then in that range, the ROI isn't there for me from the commission I'll receive personally as a sales rep from a $15,000 roof. It might still be there, but in other words, you're not getting all of the net profit, if you will, or the lion's share of the net profit. Nevertheless, the numbers you just say are at $30 to $50 a lead, somewhere in that range. I mean, I don't think there's any sales rep out there who wouldn't look at that and go, yeah, that's a great cost per lead, and I can still make those numbers work. Which, if a sales rep can say that, I can still make those numbers work. Then a roofing company owner or executive should have, I think, all the more incentive, obviously, to be running Facebook ads for their sales reps to help foster their sales growth, to help build those networks that you talked about. Because again, the company is going to be receiving the lion's share of the net profit. So if they can give a sales rep a $50 lead and he closes it, his ROI, if he had done that personally, would be there. But especially from the roofing company owner perspective, it's definitely going to be there under sort of the 100%. The parent budget, if you will.
Yeah.
Anything to add kind of on that front?
Yeah. I mean, to me, roofing companies, I'm really expecting over the next 12, 24 months, if you don't jump on this bandwagon as a roofing company, you're going to be left in the dust. I mean, this is kind of what, Google Ads was 10, 15 years ago. And it's just starting to become the expectation even for, sales reps jumping into businesses as well. Like my buddy who was looking for a roofing sales position, I mean, he interviewed a lot of different roofing companies, and he had a list of, hey, things I'm looking for in a roofing company that I want to work for. And this is something that, sales reps are starting to expect in a way. Is like, hey, is the company I'm working for, are they progressive? A good sales rep, they're not going to expect all of their leads to come from their, the company they work for. But hey, if there could be that possibility from this one company, and I know it's not going to be from this other company, again, you weigh the options. There's just a lot more that you can benefit from with jumping on some of these tactics fairly early instead of, being left behind by your competition.
I think that's a great point. And just one other thing that brings to mind for me is, I know that in the trades and home services and in roofing companies as well, one of the biggest challenges that most roofing companies have, hear it all the time, is I can't find enough good workers, right? I can't find enough good team members. So one, that's a problem. But I think another problem, especially among sales reps for roofing companies, is, and I'm struggling to retain them. They're going off and they're starting their own companies. They're going to a competitor who will pay them more, or who has more growth opportunity, et cetera. All these reasons why it's hard to retain the sales reps that you have. And I think there are two main reasons outside of whether or not basically you like your boss and the culture, which is a huge one that's proven, right? Do you like your team that you work with? Do you like the boss? I think there's two things that for roofing company owners and executive teams, two things that can really retain top talent from sales reps. The first one is your system. I mean, at the end of the day, if you have an amazing system for installing roofs, repairing roofs, running your business, et cetera, I mean, that makes a sales rep feel supported, right? Because they have confidence in the product behind them. And maybe they won't have that in another company they go to, or now they'll have to figure it out on their own if they start their own company. But I think the second one, and I think a lot of business owners understand that systems are super important. But another thing that retains top talent, in my opinion, is marketing. Mm-hmm. If you can produce a marketing presence, a brand presence that is so powerful and so much more advanced than a sales rep going and starting his own company and having to do it from the ground up, or you going to another competitor whose presence isn't as strong, I mean, that is something that most sales reps, I mean, they want to feel supported, is my point, by the executive teams above them, and that they really have, you know, a executive team and an ownership team behind them who's, as I always say, almost like storming the beachhead for them. In other words, you know, when you land as like an army on a beach, you want some bombs to have been hitting the beach before you got there, before you showed up, because it softens the beachhead, it softens the landing, it softens the invasion. And so when you show up to a homeowner's house and they've never heard of you, that's a cold invasion, right? Versus maybe Facebook ads or other type of branding and awareness campaigns that can really soften the front lawn, you know, front walkway before you get there as a sales rep. Yep. So I think all important points. We've covered a ton of ground about the distinctions between kind of brand awareness, lead gen. We've also covered the math behind, you know, what does a good, healthy, ROI-driven campaign look like on Facebook. So we've covered a ton of ground in that capacity. The last thing I want to do before we transition into one more question for you is this. If roofers were looking to get started, sales reps or roofing company owners in Facebook ads, what would be the first thing that you think they should do? Like, what's the number one campaign? What's the first step that they should take? Really practically, like, what is that? How would somebody get started kind of in experimenting with Facebook ads?
Excellent question. What I want to communicate is, like, I don't want to give people false expectations. And it's easy because I've seen a lot of people do it. It's like, oh, I get all hyped up of hearing about Facebook ads. I heard Gary Vee talk about Facebook ads, and, oh, I want to do this. Like, this seems like the latest and greatest thing. And they experiment with it, throw a couple $100 to it, maybe a couple $1,000 to it. And just like, they don't see it. Like, the ROI isn't there. And it's kind of, I got that bad taste in my mouth because I tried that and it didn't work for me. So I guess the one thing that I'd say is either learn from somebody who has done it before, specifically for the roofing industry, or hire somebody that can do it for you. Instead of, I mean, even early on, like in my Facebook ads career, it took me 6 months to figure it out when I first tried it out for Equipter. It took me 6 months to really dial it in. And since we started doing it for roofing companies through Boostpoint, it's, you know, I've seen it takes time to dial it in.
Right.
So, you know, either learn from somebody who's done it before through Ads Manager and can show you how, or either work with a marketing agency, say it's like, hey, I just want to hand this off to someone who has experience with it themselves. Here at Boostpoint, we built a software where guys can easily do it themselves as well through templates. You know, it takes you'll need to invest some time into it. But, you know, everything's set up within our platform as well to do it. But I wouldn't go into this blindly. So either get someone who knows what they're doing to do it for you, or learn from somebody who's actually made it work.
Yeah, I think that's a brilliant piece of advice, not only in Facebook ads, but in almost any area, right, of life. I mean, you can either stumble and fail and falter on your own for many weeks, many months, in your case, 6 months, potentially even years, right? Or you could have accelerated all that potentially if you had been able to maybe stumble upon somebody who could have shown you those things. Especially now, you know, when you were first getting started in Facebook ads, maybe there weren't as many people who are kind of putting out that information. But now there's absolutely, you know, those people who are authorities, trainers, coaches, marketing companies, advisors, fellow roofing companies who have been successful in running Facebook. I mean, there's any host of options out there for you to learn from somebody who's already been successful doing it. So that's a great first step. And really, maybe conversation is really the first step, right? Don't just go throw $100 at a Facebook ad unless you really are the kind of person who's like hands-on, loves to roll up your sleeves and really understand it. Go talk to somebody, you know, and put that idea a little bit more into reality. Last thing as we kind of conclude here. So if roofers, roof sales reps, anybody listening to this podcast wants to get in touch with you, meet and greet you, ask questions, learn a little bit more about Boostpoint, how can they do that, Sam? What are some of the best ways?
Yeah, so if you want to learn more about Boostpoint, just go to boostpoint.com. We're a marketing platform specifically for the roofing and home service industry, built on Facebook and Instagram ads. So a software where you can easily manage your own Facebook and Instagram ads yourself. So to learn more about that, you can go to boostpoint.com. Would love to chat with anyone who wants to just kind of follow up from this conversation as well. You can email me at sam@boostpoint.com is the way you can get a hold of me personally.
Awesome. That was fire, man. That's it. I think that wraps it up. But thanks for being on the show. It's awesome having you. You just laid out a ton of valuable points about Facebook ads. Again, thanks for being on the show and sharing all those insights.
Jeremy, it's been great. Hey, thanks for having me.
You bet. Talk soon.